Hi readers, I'm Annie. In today's video, I am going to be setting up my bullet journal for 2024. Now, not only do I record everything to do with my everyday life in my bullet journal, but this is the primary place where I record everything to do with my reading, so all of my reading goals and everything I read through the year and everything I think about all the books that I read through the year, but also this is the place where I track everything to do with my writing. That's ideas that I have throughout the year at random times, all the way through to keeping myself motivated, keeping myself going and rolling through the stories at a really good pace, and it keeps me on track with everything that I was thinking when I first started mapping out the stories. So starting off with this cover page. Now, this is so heavily inspired by Fourth Wing and the Empyrean series, and what I wanted to do here was I wanted to bring in some symbolism of Violet's tattoo with Ten and Dana, and you'll see this a lot throughout the spreads, but I really wanted to bring in a lot of the gold because I feel like it's such a vibrant colour, and I have a couple of golds that I use across my different spreads, and I really wanted to bring those into this design. Now, for my reading log, I really wanted to bring in some colour here as well, because last year I didn't colour in the boxes that become the actual books on the shelf, and for most of the year it just looked really sad and really boring until everything was like all fully filled out, which obviously then it looks great, but until that point it just looks a little bit drab. So I really wanted to include a lot of colour into this spread. Now, what I was thinking in my brain was that the books in the library archives are going to be all wrapped in leather, and I didn't want them to just be brown, so I wanted to include the green, the blue and the red kind of earthy tones to just bring in a little bit more colour into this. Now, my reading goal for 2024 is 78 books, and whilst I have included a few extra boxes over the top of that, it is just because I am half expecting myself to go over that goal, but at the same time I didn't want to completely bombard this page with book spines that I may or may not end up using. So I figured having a few spares would be pretty alright, but I don't want to include too many. But with this, the red in a minute came out so much more watery than I was expecting. I accidentally poured in way too much water into my gouache and it kind of went everywhere, and it was nowhere near as pigmented as I wanted, but mistakes were made. It's fine. We just kind of carry on and keep going. At the end of the day, this ended up being so colourful and it was exactly what I wanted. It looks exactly like how I imagine the archives to be in my brain, with all the beautiful leather bound books just scattered everywhere. Now, on this next spread, I had to put my brand new reading bracket of the year. Now, this does look a little bit crazy and I have a whole big reason for it, but the long and short of it is that the reading brackets that I've used the last couple of years, I haven't really connected with very well. They just don't feel particularly balanced to me. And whilst this bracket looks ridiculously crazy, there is a very good reason, and it's quite a long-winded reason, but the long and short of it is that I do feel like with some of the other brackets that I've used previously, not all of the books really get a fair chance to battle the other books that I read in the year and get to see what is truly the best book of the year. And I really wanted to make sure that every single book that I read got a fair and equal chance to be the best book of the year. So whilst this looks absolutely psychotic and completely bonkers as a spread, I know that by the end of the year it is actually going to be really worth it, even though it looks absolutely crazy right now and it looks like all I'm going to be doing is filling out these boxes. Just in my brain, I have a really good feeling that this is going to work exactly how I wanted it to. Okay, so moving very quickly into my author spreads. Now, this is one that has taken a little bit of evolution in 2023, and this is the stage at which we're at now. This will probably continue its evolution within the next few years, but this is something that I really found helpful this past year. Now, in 2023, I did this as an actual word goal. So I had each 1,000 words was a box to tick, whereas this time, because these are two stories that I have plotted out out and I know roughly how many chapters are going to be in them. As you can see, one is significantly longer than the other. I know roughly how many chapters there are going to be, so I have marked this via chapters rather than word count, and I think that that's going to really help me stay on track. And then we head into a bit more of a regular bullet journal spread. Now this is my year to view, and let me tell you, this is one of the most useful spreads that I have ever used, and this is something I continually come back to in exactly this format. So I end up with all 12, well, I end up with 11 months of the year, because January we will get to in a minute, so there's no point doing a forward log for January, but we end up with a line for every single day of the month, and then I do colour in which days are the weekends just to make it really easy to view at a quick glance. But this really helps me track things in advance. So if I know I've got an appointment or we're due to hang out with some friends, I can put it in here in advance. And then when I'm setting up my monthly spread, I don't forget anything. I know everything that's going on. And more importantly, I can note down when books are going to be released. This goals page for 2024 admittedly was a little bit of a last minute addition. I had a spare page that I didn't really know what to do with, so I just threw something in there super quickly, and in all honesty, I've got 20 spaces for goals and I really haven't thought too much about how I'm going to fill them out yet, and I'm going to leave some of them blank to fill them in through the year. But this spread right here, this is a new one for me, and I'm really excited to see how it works. This follows along the line of a year in pixels kind of thing, but this is specifically for tracking two habits, which is my reading and my writing. These are two habits that I consistently track every single month without fail, and they are my two most important habits for myself to track. And I like to see these boxes ticked off as many as I possibly can in a year, and I think putting them side by side like this is going to really motivate me to do one or the other. When I'm in a reading slump, I will get back to some reading. When I'm in a writing slump, I'll get back to some writing by seeing the comparison between the two, and I'm really excited for this spread and to see how this works for me this coming year. Okay, so we are back with paintbrush in hand, and this is my January sort of cover page. I tend to only do one side of the spread for this, just because I like having the calendar on the other side, and I always like having a piece of artwork somewhere within the month, and I just feel the start of the month is a really great place to put it, because then when I'm looking at the calendar, there's a little bit of something there. Now, this was one that I actually spent weeks trying to work out what on earth I was going to do for this, because I really wanted to include some sort of symbolism to Andana's transformation from being a baby into growing up. And this is where I use that different gold that I was talking about. This is an ink rather than a gouache, and it has this richer tone to it, and I really wanted to include that for this. And whilst the view of this is certainly not a canon kind of event, I really wanted to include it this way because I love the idea that the black of her new colour starts at the tips of her wings and kind of grows inwards and washes out the gold that she is as a baby. And I obviously, where we've got her tail, I couldn't work out how to show her tail turning black first before the centre of her body, and it wasn't going to work against the wing, so the tail ended up being gold as well. Don't come and argue me on it. It looks great on the page, and frankly that's all that matters. And because I like to hurt myself, I had to include D at the top there with a little halo over his head, because I love him and I miss him, and I'm not ready to talk about that quite yet. So the monthly overview and my habit trackers are the same as they pretty much always have been, but my weeklies have changed quite a lot this past year to include more of a weekly overview of my tasks, and then the days down the outside edge, just to give me sort of a this is what's happening on specific days, but also letting me see the tasks for the entire week rather than segmenting them into particular days. And I think this has been really helpful to keep me kind of going and not getting in a rut with I didn't complete all my tasks in any particular day. So that has been a super quick view as to the setup of my bullet journal. So you can see at the front here I have my key as to how I use the rolling weekly further on, and I included all of these quotes on this cover page because I felt it was just empty without it. Here's my reading log for the year with the couple extra book spines to add in later in the year, and the absolutely manic reading bracket, but I'm convinced it's going to work. I will let you know at the end of the year. You can see my author spreads and how everything is going to be tracked this coming year. My year to view with those weekends highlighted so that I can see what's going on at any one quick point in time. My 2024 goals that I kind of only have 3 filled out at the moment. The reading and writing tracker, which is going to be super helpful, and I'm excited for that. And then we have the January calendar, and then moving in to the trackers, my writing notes and brain dump, and then into the weeklies. Now, one thing I did forget to mention is at the end of my weeklies, I always have a reading log, and that just lets me have some space to get out my thoughts of everything that I read that month. And for most of this year, I think I'm going to have about 3 pages because my reading goal is a lot higher than it has been previously. So I'm going to need a little bit of extra space. Thank you so much for coming and setting up my bullet journal with me. I'm really excited for tracking everything this year. So thank you so much. Like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.